I guess we got to figure out how to keep our elected officials out of trouble because they can't figure it out. Yes, it seems that way, doesn't it? Welcome in. John Marion from Common Cause is my guest tonight. John's a good government guy. Common Cause plays an instrumental role in the consciousness of government. And after the Gordon Fox debacle here with a 3-year plea, you know, the Speaker of the House, former Speaker of the House, and some of the early laughable reaction by the General Assembly as to how we can tighten things up. John's got some ideas now we can really tighten things up. Now we are, I'm hoping that you're watching at 7:30, maybe you're watching at 11:30, so you probably have been able to see Governor Raimondo give her address. So we'll have some thoughts on that as we kick into the rundown. Welcome to My State of Mind. I am Dan York. It's a pleasure to have you aboard. And we go to the thoughts that we have today. This is the concept that the governor keeps promoting. She wants to invest in this growth thing. And I'm trying to figure out what that means. I understand English. Do you understand what this whole thing means? I can promise you this, I don't understand this idea. I mean, I get the program coming even from Washington, but this is the dumbest idea of the week, and I'm going to tell you what it is. And then, speaking of kind of feeling kind of dummy, I've never seen anybody wear a dress shirt and a nice sweater to go fix a pothole, but that's what the mayor did yesterday because we think he's working on potholes. Cliche governing. We'll talk about it. How do you go to a fire of that size and the water supply is not adequate? That's the kind of thing that everyone ought to be actually standing on their heads over. In Ferguson, they just won't quit. They're not going to quit protesting, and now with the shooting, they're right back smack dab in the middle of the top story of the national news. Your state of mind is important to us. I understand we've got a very short and sweet reaction on one of our platforms for State of Mind. And we're watching, as we record the broadcast, the PC game, which looks like it's in hand in the first round of the Big East tournament with St. John's. All right, let's dig in here a little bit here and see what we've got. The budget is the big headline, right? The governor's first presentation, kind of a state of the state and budget thing at the same time. This is today's front page previewing. Now, the governor has been chatting up the whole, concept that she wants it to be jobs, and she wants us to invest in growth, and I don't know what that means. I honestly don't. I don't know what the growth thing is that we're investing in. She's talked herself away from budget cuts. She's talked herself away from tax cuts. I don't know what she's going to do here. I got my own ideas, but I'm not the governor. You probably just saw her either moments ago or a few hours ago. I haven't seen her in her presentation because we record late afternoon. But here's some of the preview, and she was talking about some of her education ideas.
It's getting out of high school with that one step closer to the skills you need to get a job or the class credits you need to get through college on time and on your budget.
So she's throwing a couple $1 million here and there to incentivize kids to take, the comparable AP classes, that kind of thing, defined differently. So she's been nibbling at some of the educational things. That's fine. $1 million here, $1 million there, $1 million here, $1 million there is no big deal. What's really a big deal is our systemic budget problems and how she's going to cure them and invest in growth. We'll have a lot to say about it tomorrow and on the radio. Noon to 3 on WPRO. In the meantime, we can promise you this is the dumbest idea I know I've seen in quite some time. The headline struck me today when I read it in the Providence Journal. Leaders push education changes at Rhode Island College Economic Summit. And the great big idea here from Teresa Paiva-Weed, the Senate President, is to incentivize CCRI and our other public universities, colleges. There's only 3 of them, CCRI, Rhode Island College, and URI. If they improve their graduation rates, then they get more money. They're our partners, by the way, not our combatants. That's number one. Number two, the idea that they graduate 1 in 30 on time at CCRI doesn't bother me a lick. You know what it tells me? It tells me that they stopped the bleeding, that the kids that we've pushed through the system who haven't scored well or done well, stop there. They better learn before they get shoveled a degree. There's a lot of transients in community college. That's good. There are people that go there just for classes and never graduate because they just need a little bit. There are kids that make a smart decision to go to CCRI, take a few college credit classes, and then go to a bigger school. Sometimes they get their full bachelor's. It's a mosaic. I'm not concerned about 1 out of 30 kids graduating at CCRI. I'm concerned about the knuckleheads of the General Assembly who think they know what's going on with education, who stopped the kneecap mandatory testing 2 or 3 days after it was supposedly formally done. We supposedly had a formal process completed. Why do you think the Ed Commissioner is skipping out other than an Oklahoma opportunity to go home? These folks, they have no idea what they're doing at the General Assembly with education. Please stop. We'll have more shows on this. We're going to be inviting some people in on this one. Crazy. And then you got this. Isn't this, because I just think this is funny. You know, potholes are always newsworthy. Potholes are always a big conversation. Potholes are not fun. When you hit one, you think, oh my God, that's $300, you know, or something. You know, the suspension, the tire, whatever. The city of Providence is a complete unadulterated mess when it comes to snow removal. We know that. And now we know that they're working day and night, according to the headline, to help the potholes. The mayor had a little press event so people could see the proof.
We're using new technology, but we're also being much more proactive, and we have much more personnel out there on the streets making sure that we're proactive about fixing these potholes, because I know that it's a concern for many of our residents. In a lot of ways, it's also a public safety hazard. We have to invest in maintaining and preserving our infrastructure and our roads here throughout the city.
It almost looks like he almost looks like he took a class that day on how to talk about potholes. Like, a lot of it's like, no kidding, right? By the way, the equipment is not new technology. It's just a new purchase. The technology has been around for decades. I think those are Vibeco machines, aren't they? I hope they are. Carl Waddenston down there in Wyoming. But here's the funny part. Got the nice khakis, you know, well-dressed for a casual day out. Got the sweater. Why do politicians do this kind of thing? Seriously. Wow, what a hands-on mayor. Look at him. He can operate the machine. Meanwhile, his real studs, DPW guys, are looking at this guy going, he could at least come dressed with a pair of old jeans and a bad T-shirt. We would have thrown him a yellow jacket, and maybe he could have actually, if he wanted to show that he wanted to help us, you know, work for 10 hours. Who's the idiot that tells Jorge Elorza that this is a really smart thing to do for the press, because people will be so overcome with his down-to-earthness and his ability to move a machine around? New technology. This guy is learning curve. Woo! Cliches. All right. Not enough water, man. This ain't funny. This is awful. This fire was huge. Right? This Warwick fire, Quaker Lane, we've got all the signs. This is terrible. These are real condos, or they were. Well, this guy is running for some water because, you know what? The hydrants weren't working well enough. So now Mayor Avedisian and the Kent County Water Authority are launching an investigation, which gives you a lot of confidence.
We have talked to Kent County Water this morning about what their role is and what they need to do. And as they've told us, their role is to get the water here. The question will then be what happens once it's here. And because it's a private development, I believe since we haven't had water pressure issues in other locations with Kent County Water, that they probably did what they needed to do, but that's what the investigation will tell us.
Basic fundamental expectations that water pressure will be available when there's a fire from the hydrants next to the fire. I don't like the mayor's, how would you say, disposition about this. Entirely too casual, don't you think? 100 people displaced, some pets lost. Could have been worse. We'll get to it. What? How about we're ripping and someone's going to pay for this? You know, accountability? I don't know. They're not quitting in Ferguson. And the police chief in St. Louis County certainly said it right with this headline, and you'll hear him say it here. So a couple knuckleheads decided to take out 2 police officers. Luckily, they weren't taken out. They're actually released from the hospital today. But the police chief in St. Louis County was certainly on the money.
But you need to know these 2 officers took a very hard hit. I mean, anytime that you're shot in the face and have a bullet lodged in your head, anytime that you have a through and through wound where the bullet enters your shoulder and comes out the middle of your right back, those are hard hits. So we're lucky, by God's grace, we didn't lose 2 officers last night.
You know, the protesters have gotten just about an entire change out of the Ferguson government, including now their local police chief. But I'm reading the same reports and looking at the same stories you are. It looks like they're going to come out again tonight, so they don't. I guess the logic is that not going to get a couple of knuckleheads to preempt their First Amendment right to keep complaining that they want change in Ferguson. Okay, we'll keep following that. We follow you too on your state of mind. Just send us a text or a tweet I don't think you can text that number. Forget the text part. We'll add that. Tweet, Facebook post, email, call, leave a voicemail the old-fashioned way. Sometimes you say a lot, sometimes you don't say much. I think this is off the email controversy that we talked about yesterday. You know what? Sometimes less is more. One word suffices. I don't think it bothers the Clintons. They've heard that word before. John Marion has got a lot of ideas on how to clean this place up. Stay with us. Welcome back in. You've seen this guy, right?
The people close to me, the people that looked up to me, my family, I mean, it's tough.
It's tough for us, Mr. Speaker, right? It's tough for us.
It is.
It's really tough for him. John Marion runs Common Cause. Look, I have human empathy. Gordon's a good guy. Enough. They never talk about the people suffering first. It's all about their suffering. You notice that?
Yeah, I mean, you hear a lot of the same thing you just said. He's a good guy, but he's a good guy with left a trail of breadcrumbs of corruption, right, over the course of a decade. And I think we got what we deserved in electing him Speaker, because ultimately he was a flawed character, and we knew the fatal flaw was going to get him.
Well, speaking of, U.S. Attorney Peter Nerona last week at the press conference said this thing.
The allegations contained in the information and admitted to by former Speaker Fox in the signed statement of facts paint a clear picture that former Speaker Fox looted his campaign account repeatedly over a number of years to pay for plainly personal expenses, and that his official appointed position as a member of the Providence Board of Licenses was for sale.
Yeah, he laid the lumber down. Mm-hmm. Frankly, I think there's a whole lot more, but I'm not asking you to come in on investigations that could be coming. Immediately, the House Speaker now, Nick Mattiello, went, oh, you know, I know what we could do to help this. Did you laugh or cry?
Well, you know, we came out with the suggestion after Joe Almeida got jammed up. That
a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, that we need to...
State representative.
Yep, who's accused of, he didn't plead guilty like Fox, who's accused of taking $6,000 of campaign money for personal expenses. We started talking then, and had talked somewhat before then, about the need to audit these campaign accounts. But we need to audit them like it's the 21st century. And last week, the Speaker came out with a bill 24 hours after Fox pled guilty, saying, well, you hand in a paper receipt once a year from your bank statement. And it's not a public record, by the way.
People should understand what happened with Gordon Fox is amongst the things that he got caught for the wire and tax fraud for, people thought he had, and he listed that he had a couple $100,000 of cash in his campaign account. He only had 50. All he had to do was say, I got a couple $100,000, and if he had said he never provided the proof that he had $200,000 because he couldn't, because he didn't.
And no one ever checks, right? So for 6 years, he was able to skim off and make wire transfers from his campaign account to his personal account to pay personal expenses, which is against the law. and no one ever checked for 6 years. He kept reporting that balance that didn't exist.
So Nick Mattiello, the House Speaker, here's a headline that kind of cracked me up that John refers to. It's amazing. 24 hours. Here's a bill idea. Okay, we'll make you provide a bank statement. As if that's enough.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is if you're going to steal $100,000, you're going to forge a bank statement, right? That's not going to be that hard. And so what you need to do is something like Massachusetts does for statewide office. They want to do it for the legislature, but the legislature doesn't want it yet, which is the bank provides the statement, right? The bank submits it because the bank doesn't want to get in trouble lying on behalf of a politician. And you need to do it more than once a year. They do it monthly up there. And you need to do it electronically because, you know, it's 2015.
Well, you got a whole list. Can we put those up, Laura? We got a whole list of things. You want a constitutional amendment on the ballot that would restore full jurisdiction to the Ethics Commission. We'll talk about it in the next segment. You want to pass legislation requiring mandatory audits, and you want to prevent candidates from serving as their own campaign treasurer and mixing campaign and personal funds in the same bank account. Let's take the last one first.
Mm-hmm.
Insane.
Yeah. So,
Same checking account.
yeah.
Different functions.
So presumably, the governor who spent about $5 million in her campaign could have kept it in her personal checking account, which makes no sense at all. There's no controls there. Nothing you would have to have in the professional world.
Who does that? Is there another state that allows that anywhere?
Not that I know of. So,
I mean, in my book, Only in Rhode Island, that's chapter 43. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's make sure we get separate accounts. One for your politics, one for your personal. You think we'll get that passed?
yeah, I think they want to pass.
Like, hello? The second one, again, Laura put that up just so I'm following John's thought here. Mandatory audits, meaning these bank statements from a bank direct to what, the Board of Elections?
And the Board of Elections, who you report your balance to, so they have to check what you're saying against what the bank is showing. And they need to start doing that. They haven't been doing that unless there's a complaint of some type.
You think you'll get that? Meaning we'll get that?
I hope so. So at a minimum, what we should get is they should make those bank statements, they should require those bank statements be submitted and let us audit them, put them up online. I'll compare them. You'll compare them. People would have a great time comparing them.
When we come back, we'll talk about the first one, which is the culture issue. Stay with us.
Political corruption amnesia. You know, you can have someone who's violated the public trust and they're back running for office again 8 years later.
U.S. Attorney Peter Nerona at that same press conference announced a plea bargain for the former House Speaker Gordon Fox of 3 years. He made a really tough speech. What did you think about it?
Yeah, I thought it was great. You know, it was a kind of a wake-up call. He seemed to sort of be trying to grab us by the shoulders and say, we've got to stop acting this way because it's not serving the state well.
Yeah, I pointed this out to Dan McGowan the other night, though, who did some good reporting on Gordon Fox. It doesn't just mean Buddy Cianci. That was about Cianci running for office again after. And Gordon Fox was well known. There was no charges, nothing formal yet, but there was well-known reported journalistic proof that the feds were looking at Providence Economic Development Partnership. They were already in trouble with HUD. They had all sorts of reconciliation issues. Fox was their lawyer. I mean, that was known. He's running for office again in 2012 against a competitor, and Gina Raimondo, then treasurer, is hand-holding him, endorsing him. The same folks who were so disgusted over Cianci's election, and they had a right to be, were the same folks who were holding signs for Gordon Fox when everyone knew that he was in the middle of a hot kitchen. So the culture here is full of amnesia, not just what Nerona is talking about.
No, and I mean, go back further to 2003, and Fox, it's not pled guilty, but agreed to a settlement with the Ethics Commission, admitting that he did work for GTEC at the same time he was voting and working on GTEC legislation, which is a big, big no-no. And so, you know, we've known there was a trail of breadcrumbs for a decade, right? Interesting thing is, Ethics Commission couldn't do that now. Ever since 2009, they wouldn't even be allowed to ask Gordon Fox questions about that case because the Supreme Court took that power away.
Right, so if we put that screen up again, Laura, if you can, this is the first thing on it. We're going backwards. A constitutional amendment on the ballot that would restore the full jurisdiction. of the Ethics Commission over the legislature? Well, with the speech and debate clause, which was the argument on the Bill Irons case, which then not only won that case but dismantled the Ethics Commission's real oversight of the legislature, you want to then do what to restore that? What's the mechanism?
So the mechanism is the General Assembly puts a constitutional amendment on the ballot, and the people, simple majority vote, 50% plus one, pass it, and then the Ethics Commission gets their oversight back. And all it would do is change two sections of the Constitution, essentially to say there's a speech and debate protection, right? So the governor can't go after the legislature. That goes back to pre-colonial days. But the Ethics Commission can examine what a legislator's doing if there's a potential conflict of interest. And right now, there's no oversight. There's nothing at all. So when it comes to a legislator using their official job to enrich themselves, there's nothing anyone can do unless it's bribery, right? We saw bribery last week, but not everything rises to that, right? Passing a bill to boost your pension, which is what they used to do in the 70s and 80s, that's legal again.
It's unbelievable. You think you'll get that one?
I've gotten a lot more feedback. There have been other cases in the last couple of years, but in the last week and a half, I've gotten more feedback, more phone calls, more Facebook likes, more tweets at us, more conversations at the grocery store than I've gotten in 5 years, because I think people...
This was a big one.
This was a big one.
The former House Speaker goes down. It's been a long time jammed up. I don't sense the urgency on the part of this House Speaker, though. He seems to have this false notion that because he thinks he's a good guy, that everything's going to be okay. As if the concept of public trust and Nick Mattiello are, I think, very different for the constituents and him.
So he called that bill special interest legislation, right?
Ethics Commission.
But it's public interest legislation, and the difference is huge, right? Special interest serves a narrow group of people. Public interest serves all of us, right? We're a small group of people at Common Cause, but what we're doing is trying to do something that's in the public's interest. We don't benefit financially. We don't get any gain other than getting to say we helped everybody in the state.
He's saying, well, geez, Gordon Fox wouldn't have been jammed up by the Ethics Commission on this one. No, because his crimes rose to a higher problem. We have everyday miscellaneous corruption, near corruption, environmental issues that the Ethics Commission could then get back in the game to slow down or stop. Hello? Right?
Yeah, and we went back and we looked at how many times a legislator's recusing, right? So choosing to take a pass on a vote because they might have a conflict. Prior to 2009, they were accusing. After 2009, it drops off a cliff because there's no cop on the beat. There's literally nobody to scare them. Hey, this might be a conflict. Maybe I shouldn't get involved.
All right. What do people do? Call their legislators.
Call their legislators and tell their legislators that when they sit down with the speaker, they need to send the signal. And the president of the Senate. Call your senator and your rep.
Common cause. Common sense. John, thank you.
Thank you.
One more thing. PC's playing. Hey, PC was up at press time. They beat St. John's, which it must have done. That helps the seed. They could be a 4 or 5 seed by the time we're done here. Good stuff. We'll see you on the radio tomorrow at noon on WPRO and back here. The ACLU will be in the house to talk about police discrimination and the like. And of course, we'll talk about the governor's message as well. Good night. Thanks for watching.